Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining our Parks Victoria's Data Discovery Project, our citizen science webinar today. We're excited to have you here. Thank you very much. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country that I'm sitting on today. So I'm sitting on Bunurong country, but we've got quite the representation across the state. And I'm wondering, as a way to use the Q&A box, if you could write in the Q&A box, and I'll ask my panelists to do this as well, whose country you're sitting on today as a way of paying their respects to the traditional owners of that country. So I'm coming to you from Bunurong country, and I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of this land who are current, past and emerging. I'm wondering where everyone is sitting today. I'm just going to have a look in the Q&A box to see if anyone has written in just yet. I can see that Hannah is sitting on Gariwerd country, which is out in the Grampians National Park. I can see people are typing as well, which is great. Fantastic. We might keep moving, but if you'd like to pay your respects, you're welcome to put it into the Q&A. I've got another one that's come through. People are sitting on Gunai-Kurnai country, Wadawurrung country. Oh, they've all come through at the same time. Fantastic. Awesome. We might keep going with our webinar, but it's exciting to have you here today. So we are going to be talking about what is a citizen science action. So we're going to be going through lots of different sort of scenarios and also focusing on one particular project that Parks Victoria is promoting at the moment, which is called Data Discovery, and it's hosted on iNaturalist, but we'll get into that in a moment. But a few different sort of concepts of citizen science that we will be touching on are things like surveys, and these can either be one-off surveys or scheduled on a regular basis. So they might be annually, biannually or monthly, but there's lots of different sort of survey type actions that you can participate in. There might be community-based actions as part of an organised program. You might be able to be part of a citizen science action through an idea called flexible volunteering, and we will talk about that just in a little bit. You might even come across the ability to be a citizen science by taking incidental observations, and I think this is a really sort of emerging field of citizen science as we take advantage of some of the really awesome platforms that are out there. And also community sightings. I'm not sure if anyone has been keeping track of all of the whale sightings that have been happening in the last couple of months. It's pretty amazing. There are some really lovely stories out there of people who are identifying the different whales and reporting some really awesome numbers, which is fantastic. But yeah, just a little bit of a snapshot of what kind of citizen science actions can be undertaken or are out there or opportunities to participate in, but we will delve into a couple of those in a little bit more detail. So as I keep moving on, I am going to throw to my co-host, who is Brooke Reynolds. Before I do that, I was just going to mention a little bit of housekeeping. We do have the Q&A, I don't want to say chat box because that's not what it is. It's called a Q&A. And we have our lovely Leanne Riggs, who's in our volunteer team, who will be answering any of your questions. My co-host today is Brooke Reynolds. He is part of the volunteer team as well. And before we continue on, I'll also introduce myself. My name is Emma and I'm part of the education team at Parks Victoria. So we are excited to have you here today. Brooke, I'm going to throw to you now. Tell us a little bit about some amazing citizen science actions or some citizen science findings that have happened recently.
Yeah, g'day everyone. Thought I would cover off some of the biggest citizen science discoveries that we've had in this country, or rediscoveries, should I say. The first one was the rediscovery of a megalodon tooth just on the southern coast of Victoria. It was verified and is currently at Museums Victoria. It's tens of millions of years old and has been confirmed to be from a shark that was within our waters. Next one, Emma. Another example was the giant earthworm out at Gippsland. This was a world first recording in terms of its verification as an earthworm. Nothing like it had been recorded in Western science before. So it is the first and largest ever rediscovered in this country. Next one, Emma.
That image makes me feel really uncomfortable, Brooke. That
a little bit, yeah. They're not the prettiest.
It is the biggest earthworm I've seen.
It is. This one is a particularly good story. So the bridled nail-tailed wallaby was thought to be extinct from around the 1930s. It was never seen until 40 years later. It was rediscovered in the 70s, and upon the citizen science rediscovery of the species, the Queensland government bought land surrounding the sighting and turned it into a national park. And thanks to the opportunities presented by citizen science, 1,300 of these wallabies now exist as of last year.
That really is an amazing achievement coming from somebody who has had a sighting to look at the other end of the scale, and a whole national park has been created because of that sighting.
This led to real outcomes. It led to protection of the species, and it's led to a really good conservation story.
And a really beautiful little wallaby as part of our biodiversity, which is lovely.
The last one I wanted to highlight is the Wollemi pine. So a little while ago, some citizen science rediscovered this one in the Blue Mountains. No living record in Western science existed before they found this one. So the only record we had was from fossils. So this was the first living tree that was found in this country.
Brooke, did they find out if there was was this tree laying dormant? Or seedling or germling laying dormant at all? Do you know?
No, it wasn't. It was it was this picture actually.
Fantastic. So we are here for a specific citizen science sort of project that Parks Victoria is promoting at the moment, which is really exciting. So Brooke and myself, we work in the sort of the people side of Parks Victoria. So me sitting inside the education team and Brooke sitting inside the volunteer team. And we have a project that we have launched on a platform called iNaturalist. We will go into in depth about iNaturalist a little bit later on, but if you haven't explored it just yet, get your phone out and just use the camera app to highlight the QR code on the bottom left of your screen. And this will take you to the Parks Victoria's data discovery project. Basically, we've been working with our Parks Victoria scientists to identify a number of our parks that we don't have enough information on. And so what we're doing is we're highlighting those parks through this project to enable us to sort of, I guess, raise the awareness and the public profile of these places so that we are able to capture more data and make better informed decisions. So it is a very cool sort of project. I'm wondering if the people are here, if you're answering in the Q&A, if you've heard of the data discovery project, or if you could tell us whether or not you've used iNaturalist before. I'm just going to jump in. When I use the Q&A, it always jumps down to the bottom, so I'm going to scroll to the top and make sure that I haven't missed any questions. But I'm wondering if those people would like to contribute and just sort of say whether or not they have used iNaturalist before. However, it is a really cool platform, and yeah, that's what we will be discussing a little bit further today. Do I have any questions? Brooke, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
No, beautifully summed up, Emma.
Fantastic. So you won't just be hearing from Brooke and myself today. We actually have 3 amazing panelists joining us. We have Joe, who is a biodiversity officer working with Parks Victoria, who's here with us today. Joe, do you want to give us a wave so people can see you? Fantastic. We also have Karis Martin, who is part of our Youth Volunteering Fund and a practicing teacher at the moment who is on school holidays. So thank you so much for volunteering your time, Karis. Karis is going to be talking about citizen science as part of your sort of everyday thinking. We also have the amazing Hannah Old, who is here, who is sitting out on Gariwerd country at the moment, and she's giving a lovely little wave, who'll be talking about a program that happens out her way that is quite inspirational. So I reckon you've probably heard enough from Brooke and myself for the moment. I'm just jumping into the chat. Oh, thank you, Leanne. Leanne has used iNaturalist to identify some flora. Thank you for commenting. So probably heard enough from Brooke and myself, and we're going to jump to our panelists. So Joanne, I'm just going to add a spotlight for you so that you jump up on everyone's screen and ask you a bunch of questions, which is pretty exciting. My first question for you is all about the science perspective. Can you tell us basically what is data from a citizen science perspective?
Sure. So I guess data is any piece of information that can be reliably recorded, whether that's part of the programs that you've referred to, Emma, or whether it's incidental observations that you might take using something like iNaturalist when you're out and about doing what you do. If it can be stored in a reliable way, then it's useful data. Okay,
fantastic. When you say reliable, what do you mean?
Yeah, so I basically mean it can be verifiable. So that's where photos are amazing, because then someone else can jump on and make sure that it's been identified as the right species. And also it's got to be accessible.
And so that's interesting, because when I think about data, I always think about numbers and I think about spreadsheets, but it's actually also photos, soundscapes. What's a soundscape?
Yep. Soundscape is a recording of what you're hearing. So in the context of this, it's what you're hearing in nature, whether it's bird calls, frog calls. That can also be uploaded onto things like iNaturalist, and someone can identify that.
What about counts? Can I physically sort of count, and will that be valuable data?
Absolutely. Yep.
Fantastic. Can you think of any other forms of data, Brooke? We would have photos, soundscapes, taking surveys.
Oh, yeah, it could be any written like information about quantities that you found, numbers. The data can be anything at all.
And all of it is useful. Even no data. I used to talk about that with my classroom. Okay, so tell us, how does a sighting, like a specific piece of data by a member of the public impact Parks Victoria's land management decisions?
Yeah, so all land management decisions are only ever as useful or only ever as good as the information and data that informs them. So lots of our reserves, as it's been highlighted, are pretty data deficient. And data is always useful in making decisions. A really good example of this is in pest species management. So generally, not always, but generally, if you've got an invasive species, it'll exist in a known area and there'll be an invasion front. And we might not necessarily know where that is. We might know they occur here, but we don't know how fast they're spreading or how far they've spread. And that's where it's just about having eyes on the ground. So as citizen scientists, you can report sightings of things. And there's actually a really cool tool through iNaturalist where we can get alerts. So if someone reports a pest species that we want to know about that's outside of the area we know it exists, then we'll get an alert that will tell us within 24 hours that someone's reported that species.
And that's a new feature we've just recently built in, isn't it, Joe? So if somebody identifies, for example, a European crab claw that has moved locations along the shoreline, it's actually alerting our scientists within 24 hours, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And I believe there was a sighting recently, and talk to me about how does, I know we have discussed briefly before, one sighting of a European crab claw or a different invasive species somewhere outside of its sort of an area that we know it is. Why is that important? Why do we jump on that really quickly?
Sure, because with pest management, it's all about containment. So we can, if we're putting all of our efforts into controlling that pest species where we know it exists, if someone reports a crab over here, that then becomes the most important crab for us to go in and get and eradicate and bring that population back in before it keeps spreading.
And before it gets like a stronghold, isn't it? Or like a strong population in that area.
Yep, exactly. You've got to get on them quick. So the quicker, the better.
Do we have any other examples of where that's happened?
Oh, it's all over the place. So feral pigs is another example of where they're spreading. So if we can get observations from people about where they're going. Cane toads is the obvious one that everyone thinks about when they think of, invasive species moving across the country, but there's hundreds.
And so by capturing them early, it helps us really to nip it in the bud, doesn't it?
Correct. Yep. Helps us focus where we want to put our effort.
Amazing. And I love that iNaturalist has the ability to tell us that, which I think is something that we need to celebrate a little bit more. I'm going to throw to the next question. Brooke, shall I throw to you?
So yeah, what's the difference between data and research quality data, Joanna? What's the defining difference between the two for our audience?
Yep, it's all about the reliability of that data. So generally data is being fed in by humans and humans make mistakes. So if you can verify that information, and again, this is where photos and soundscapes and all those things that you can load up onto iNaturalist are amazing. And iNaturalist is amazing, in fact, because it has that ability to have other people jump in and verify what you're finding. It's not just about the person who's going out and making the observation. It's also got this amazing backing of community scientists who spend their time at the computer identifying the things that other people are finding, which is just something that blows my mind and I think is so incredible. And you'll be amazed if you upload a picture of a plant in flower. Often you'll get someone identify it for you within a couple of hours. So it's an incredible program. And it helps us too, because if someone puts in a bit of information, we don't necessarily know that that's reliable. But if 3 other people jump in and confirm that that's exactly what that species is, then we can be really sure that that's a correct bit of information that we can use in land management decisions.
So you as let's say you're a brand new citizen scientist, you've just downloaded iNaturalist, you're just getting started. It is possible for you to submit a piece of data that is research quality that leads to land management outcomes.
Yeah, that's correct. So it has the ability to become research quality. And this is a really good point, Brooke, because with data, it's always important to not overstep what you're comfortable with and what you know. So in iNaturalist, you can take a photo of a tree and you don't need to know what type of tree that is. You don't need to be able to get it right down to the exact species name. You can put it in as tree. And then someone else who knows what they're talking about can come in and identify that, as long as you've got all of the bits of information you need. So, more than one photo, a photo of the tree, a photo of the leaves up close, if it's flowering, if it's got any seed pods, the more photos and the more information you can gather will help someone coming from that back end of the community that are of identifiers to come in and identify that plant for you and then get that to research grade.
I love that concept. Sorry, Brooke, jumping in on you. I just love that concept that I can take a photo and someone will tell me what it is.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And the program has AI built in as well. So it will have a guess.
Okay.
But my advice is look at what it's telling you the guess is, but don't necessarily go with what the AI is telling you. If you're not confident, put it as, back to the family or whatever and let someone else who's confident make that call.
There are quite a few dedicated scientists on the platform who spend a lot of time grading people's entries, which I think is just so valuable to know that if you've cited something and you put it up and then somebody says, this is a very cool orchid that you've found, well done. Oh, yeah. I love that.
It's awesome.
Sorry, Brooke, I jumped in on you.
It definitely sounds like if you are new to iNaturalist and you aren't 100% sure what you're doing and you haven't had a lot of experience out in the field, you are not necessarily on the back foot. You've got the community that is watching your work and is actually helping you become better each time you do a citizen science action.
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic. Oh, I'm going to jump to our next question and keep us on our time schedule. Joe, tell us, how does Parks Victoria actually use data to show that we have biodiversity or lacking of areas where it's lacking biodiversity? How does that work?
Yeah, so essentially we can't protect and care for things that we don't know are there. So
Absolutely.
The more information we have about our parks, the more we can know what we need to do to protect them. And also, a lot of the time, the park might have been created for a specific reason. There might be some specific species there that we know exists, but often those records are really old. So all information is good information because it's up to date, it's modern, and you also don't know when something might become an important piece of information. So a good example there is gang cockatoos. They were quite a common occurrence until pretty recently, but this year they've just been upgraded to a threatened species. So now all of that information that we've got becomes really important because we can look at it and go, well, actually, where have they been seen recently, and get that important information coming in.
And I know some of the data that we do have in existing parks can inform us to make decisions about reintroducing threatened species as well. So I know there's talk about introducing some species to Wilson's Prom as insurance populations, but we can only do that if we know that like the invasive species or the feral sort of species like foxes and cats are lower, so that we know that they can survive. Which is really interesting. And that sort of brings me back to our data discovery, our specific project. So we love all platforms that gather data. So Atlas of Living Australia, Frog ID Watch, there are so many really great citizen science opportunities that you can participate in. This particular program that we've been promoting, Parks Victoria's Data Discovery, is highlighting areas that we don't know much information about. And without information, we can't make as well-informed land management decisions. So it is a really, really important initiative. Exciting things. Do we have any questions for Joe? I'm just going to double check. Not at the moment, but if you do have questions for Joe, you are welcome to put them into the Q&A. And we are going to jump to our lovely Youth Volunteer Fund person, which is so hard to say. Hello, Karis. How are you going?
Hi, I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming and spending some time with us on your school holidays. I'm just going to spotlight you. Give me one moment while I wrangle the tech. And then I'm going to throw to Brooke for your first question, which he can't see yet, so that's okay.
So, Karis, how does one take a photo or a soundscape that is going to contribute to the citizen science movement on iNaturalist?
Look, I think we're pretty lucky that we're all a little bit technology and phone obsessed these days, because it's pretty much really simple. I mean, when I use iNaturalist, I've got the app already set up on my phone. I've got a full profile, and if I see something that I want to know more about or I'm really passionate about and I feel like sharing it with someone, I take a series of photos from a bunch of different angles, and then you can just upload it onto iNaturalist directly from your phone. And because of the technology we've got, it's got things like geotagging, it's got times that it's taken, all of this, and it just makes it really easy. If you're in an area and don't have any signal or anything like that, you can just come back and slam it on the app later, or you can upload it on via the web. It's actually really, really simple the way that they've done it.
Karis, I'm on to you though. Sorry, have you been using this with your classroom?
I have.
Some of your young people?
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's brilliant. So typically, obviously, they're not allowed phones in class, but they get really excited when they're allowed to use this. We are right next to Parks Vic Greswell Reserve. So when we're doing biodiversity audits, we get them set up with their profiles and we send them out there and they go and do audits and species count. And look, my area of knowledge of IDing grasses and plants isn't amazing, so it's really cool for them. They go out, take all the photos, and then they can connect with a series of scientists that know all of this and use that to conduct those audits for us at school.
Very cool. Sorry, Brooke, you go.
That's all right. It sounds like that iNaturalist, when you submit a photo, it actually adds value to that piece of data because it records the time and the date in which you've taken it, but also your location. So it becomes this like added value when you post something. It's not just a photo.
Yeah. It's like what you guys were talking about previously, tracking invasive species and things like that. It becomes really important for identifying where they are, where they might be moving, and seeing if they're appearing in areas that they've typically never appeared in before. So it's going beyond just IDing the species, but we can actually use it to, I guess, monitor their movements and their migratory patterns and things like that.
We obviously want photos that are sort of close up and in good lighting, but without impacting the species at all as well. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got to be really kind of conscious of where you are stepping in and how much, you know, you're getting involved in. I guess as technology improves, it gets easier, but it is really important, especially when you're recording things like soundscapes. If you're doing like a frog call at night, you just got to be really respectful of the noise and just the environment you're in.
Absolutely, and have that kind of minimal impact in the back of your mind as well. So like, I know if I see a beautiful flower and I try not to step off the track and I'm kind of like reaching over to take a photo of that beautiful flower, but you don't want to trample anything on the way. That reminds me, I will send a really great document with a follow-up email that has a minimal impact guidelines in it after this webinar as well. It also has a few other resources in there for everyone who is tuning in at the moment. Let's jump to your next question, Karis. So tell us, how do you be a citizen science without committing too much time? This is such a strange question to ask someone, but is it just easy to be to make it as a part of your everyday?
I definitely think it is, especially if you're out on a dog walk or something like that and you see something or you're particularly passionate. It all comes down to getting to know what projects are out there and what's available and getting to know what you're passionate about, because there's, you know, as you guys stated at the start, you can do things like surveys, you can get out and do really properly scheduled and formatted ones, but they do take a lot more time. Or else if you've just got the app on your phone and you're feeling particularly lazy that day, look, anything is better than nothing. If you're out there taking a photo that can really help make a difference and just observe a species in a different environment, that's heaps. That's better than just doing nothing. But if you feel like getting more involved and you've got more time, there's so many projects out there as well. So it's really balancing, you know, what are your passions, how much time do you have available, and then communicating with the research, you know, officers if you want to do things like that, and working with them.
I particularly love this photo that's up on the screen at the moment, and I thought I would give just a little quick background about it. So we have some really amazing dedicated volunteers that spend quite a lot of time at night doing grassland surveys, which is amazing. And it's like night after night, and it's like quite involved, and it's a huge commitment of time, and the work they do is fantastic. But this particular photo does not represent that. This photo is a group of individuals who have waited until night. They've put up a white sheet, they've shone a light on the white sheet, and they're now counting all of the insects that are attracted to that particular sheet, which I just think is fascinating. It's a very cool activity to do with students, like when you're on a camp or on a hike and things like that. And then they take photos at that point in time and upload it. But it's a cool way to measure biodiversity that's happening in that area at that point in time. It's an interesting
writing that down to try with my students next time we're on camp.
Yes, absolutely. Let's flick to your next question. I'll leave it with you, Brooke. I keep throwing Brooke under the bus, sorry.
That's all right. This one's probably my favorite question, is why do it? What are the reasons behind engaging with the citizen science program? No matter who you engage it with, there are a whole number of programs around Victoria, but why do it?
It's a pretty big question. I think there's multiple perspectives. I mean, if we kind of go back a bit and go back to Joe's point, from a data perspective, it's huge, because the amount of data that's being collected, if everyone gets out there and takes photo and is doing the geotagging, that's providing so much information that's not really feasible on that kind of scale if you were just doing it from a Parks Vic or a research point of view. From a science perspective, it's amazing. I mean, I feel like there's sometimes a lot of barriers between the public and the scientists. So it really is helping encourage people to get out there to see that they are contributing to science. It also improves their scientific literacy, their engagement with nature around them as well. Educationally wise, for me, it's outstanding. It gets my kids involved in math, which is really challenging to do sometimes. But overall, it's actually just quite fun. And what you find that you end up doing is kind of developing quite a lot of ownership and respect for the land around you as well. You start becoming a lot more aware of what's going on around you, and you start feeling more confident in even just IDing plants or anything like that. There's so many advantages to it. It really is outstanding.
It's so interesting, Karis. I was reading an article the other day about the amount of people that they're called twitchers, like bird watchers, over COVID, and they didn't even realise that it happened. They were sort of just all of a sudden, they're like, oh, there's a pigeon, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, there's a regent honeyeater, and they were like, when did I learn that? And they've just, and a lot of that is to do with like the bird life, birds in backyards, citizen science movement, which was really strong as well. But I jumped in on you, Brooke. Did you want to ask another question?
No, all good. That's a beautiful summation. it sounds like the benefits extend beyond the personal level. It provides so many benefits at so many levels, and it's a really good point that you can achieve more than if you were just dependent on a Parks Victoria approach or something like that. It is a community-backed approach that has real impact.
Absolutely. I'm going to throw to our next question, Karis, and this one I want to know from your students' perspective, and if you can sort of put your teacher hat on, do they find that it's important, and can they see an impact when they're contributing to citizen science actions, or yourself as well? It's a tricky question to answer.
Look, from a teacher perspective, absolutely, it's important. And I think that they can really see an impact. The way that we deliver it to the students to help them get a little bit more engaged, it's basically delivered as inquiry-based learning, so project-based. So they can really get hands-on with the learning, and they can actually really see the impact that they're having, because then what we go and do is if we're observing invertebrate species in a certain area, we then develop projects to build housing and protection areas for them and things like that. So they're seeing what's going on, and they're also able to develop a solution to help improve that and really focus on the biodiversity. From a research perspective, we haven't actually gone that far into how their data is actually impacting and providing into research databases yet, but from that perspective, absolutely. And yeah, I think they get really engaged with it because it's more than just numbers. They're actually able to get out there and hands-on themselves.
And I think part of that, Karis, is some of our responsibility. And this is where these kind of projects and iNaturalist allows us to have that communication to feed back to you. So as we were discussing with Joe, the concept that if you upload a sighting to iNaturalist and we have built-in alerts around indicator species that we need to know information about whether they've moved or whether there is an increase in numbers or whether there's a sighting of a rare species, and that informing our scientists, I think that is just so authentic and so rewarding for people to know. Yeah, it's very cool.
It's also really good for just getting the kids, particularly at this age, involved in science and STEM
Absolutely.
careers and things like that, because I find we're getting a massive decline in students engaged in science. And if they can do projects like this, working with animals and nature, I mean, how cool. Really fantastic.
Being amazingly engaged in nature and animals in a minimal impact way. I love it. It's good. It's a tricky one to manage. Karis, thank you so much for your time and your energy and all of your answers. It's been fantastic. We are going to jump to the lovely Hannah Auld. Hannah, I'm just going to grab you up on screen because for everyone to see. And flick to your next slide. Oh, are you there, Han? You all good?
Yeah, sorry, I'm here. Hello, everybody.
That's okay. And you're coming at our presentation today from a bit of a different perspective to what we've been discussing. We've sort of been discussing the opportunity to tap in and out of citizen science actions, to be part of like online movements with platforms, but you run a very different program out your way. Can you tell us, sorry, flicking to my next slide, can you tell us when you have seen a citizen science initiative benefit a community?
For sure. Thanks, Emma. So as part of my role here, I focus a lot on community engagement, and I support our environment team as well to help their projects. And one of their projects has been monitoring small mammals for countless years, over 14, I believe. And so they have 36 remote sites where they monitor the small mammals, and that's in relation to fire and weather, like rainfall and things like that. And so I worked with an ecologist to develop a bird survey. So we went to those same 36 remote sites and we started to survey the birds as well to support this data. And so to do that, we don't have enough staff on ground to be able to collect that data in spring and autumn every year. And so we really required help from the community. And so we trained 40 citizen scientists over a 10-week program to build their skills and knowledge of the local bird species and how to also collect data efficiently and effectively, so that we can have higher quality data. And so it really gave them an opportunity to learn new skills, come together and build their knowledge of the park as well. So it was really beneficial because it was just off the back of COVID. So we're really seeing the community come together and support each other through that. And it's getting outside every spring and autumn to conduct these surveys, and the results have been really positive. The group has actually grown, so I believe there's over 55 volunteers now who take part in this program, and there's a really great supportive network where they come together and all we do is talk about birds, and it happens every spring and autumn over a weekend, and it's been incredibly positive for the local community to learn new skills and contribute to science, because we actually did a study of this study, and we understood that the quality of data that these volunteers were collecting was the same high quality of our ecologist. So our citizen scientists were producing data just as high as what our ecologists would. So we're really thankful for their energy and effort over that time. And it's an ongoing study as well.
It's called the Great Gariwerd Bird Survey.
Yeah, so anyone can come and contribute, and it's over in spring and autumn in the Grampians. So it's about 3 hours from Melbourne.
Oh, amazing. Han, you do have a question in the Q&A from Karis. If people want to get involved, how do they?
So if you wanted to become involved, we have a volunteer system called Park Connect. And so if you were to jump on Park Connect, you can see the Great Gariwerd Bird Survey on there, and you can join the group as well. And there's a means of contacting the project manager of that, so that you can then be included in all the emails and communication as well.
Amazing. And we might put that link into our follow-up email as well.
For sure.
I'm going to throw to my next slide, Hannah, because my question is about that anyway. Tell us why it is so special about the Great Gariwerd Bird Survey.
I think it's so special because we saw a really large number of volunteers come together collectively over such a long period of time, and there was just a really large interest, but also a huge commitment from these volunteers who not only were meeting once a week for 10 weeks, they then contributed their weekends, a weekend every spring in order to collect this data. So that you've just seen friendships develop and a really strong sense of community for protection for the park. And we can see that this group of people are also really interested in and see the benefit that science is having, especially citizen science. So we're just seeing that we're just seeing a lot of really positive behaviours come out of it, and it's also just a lot of fun.
We've got a few photos to flick through, and you can actually just see like the diversity of people, the community spirit that you've got happening there. And it actually just looks like a really great day out, and that I think I might be coming this spring would be really lovely, or next autumn. I'll flick through, but they all look like they're having a really lovely time.
Yes, this is part of the training program as well. Everyone has their bins or the binoculars out. And yeah, everyone learnt some really incredible skills as well.
You can clearly see the passion. No one's upset to be there.
Yeah, for sure.
This is your main group?
This is probably only like 1/3 of our main group. But yeah, these are our OGs who took part of it, and they're all just really passionate people.
And I think it really shows how you can take something that's really, really small, so making a sighting or contributing to iNaturalist or doing something, but once you find that passion and you follow it, you can almost find your people, can't you? You can find a sense of community and belonging, and I don't know, this is such a lovely program to be a part of. Well done to you, Han.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell me who these guys are.
So we have we're very, very lucky that one of the volunteers was an incredible photographer, and he actually created the video which Emma will be linking us to as well. So he's been taking some really beautiful photos of a lot of the birds. Like he caught a photo of a newly hatched wedge-tailed eagle chick in the nest, and like falcons and kestrels, and he's really, really fabulous at taking images, as you can see.
Amazing. And Brooke, you can go for the final question for Han.
Oh, I love this question. What's your advice from your perspective, Hannah, for people who are sort of on the fence? They know enough to maybe want to download iNat, but where do they start? What do they do? What's your advice?
I guess it's definitely going back to what Emma said before about finding new people. It can be quite daunting going into science because it can be quite technical, but it also can be really, really fun. So a really great way of starting out is connecting with people who might already be doing it or who could be interested, and you go on that journey together. But say for birds, you can take part in the bird life program of Birds in Backyards, and that's sort of, you can understand your own skill level and sort of grow from there. But I think, you know, if you are just starting out, it can be intimidating. So, and it can take a little while to build up that knowledge. So don't be afraid that it can be overwhelming and you might not know everything, but gosh, no one knows everything. So take little steps and find those people who are also really interested and passionate, and like they'll come out of the woodwork. There's heaps of them. So yeah, volunteer as much as you can as well, because I found that volunteering was the best way to connect with like-minded people, but also develop skills that you might not be able to do in a job, because you sometimes need those skills to get that job. So volunteering is a really good option.
It's that beautiful balance of purpose as well as gaining experience and then having fun, and then, yeah, I don't know. I also enjoy it. So thank you for sharing, Han. That was really fantastic.
No
Brooke,
worries.
do you have any final questions for Han?
No, I'm good. If we have time, Joe, what would your advice be in starting out?
I guess everything Hannah's said, having a community around you really helps. The other advice maybe I'd say would be don't be overwhelmed and feel like what you have to add won't add value, because sometimes you don't even know the value of the data you're collecting. For instance, you know, if you take a photo of a plant that's flowering, someone might come back to that in 10 years' time to look at how the timing of a flowering plant has changed over the years, or when migratory birds start being seen each year. You might not even know, but you're contributing something valuable every time you collect any piece of data.
Absolutely. I think, sorry, Brooke, me. Great. Thanks, Joe. That was awesome. I don't think we've got any further questions, but my next sort of idea is where to from here. And I guess I just want to remind people that there are so many different citizen science sort of opportunities. There are so many volunteering opportunities that you can check out, and we are just sort of scratching the surface of one opportunity that we're promoting at the moment, which is the Parks Victoria Data Discovery Project. And like thinking about, we've thought about parks where we need more information, but there's lots and lots of other places that need information as well. So what we've done is we've captured some of the really great citizen science programs that are out there at the moment, and you're welcome to take a photo or a screenshot of this slide just so that you can check them out and see what is happening. The whales that we referred to earlier, there are some amazing sightings happening by the Dolphin Research Institute at the moment. Frog ID have also got some pretty hectic soundscapes happening with their frog in the frog space as well. So I highly recommend checking them out. You can't do enough citizen science actions, in my opinion, and you can't have enough citizen science apps on your phone. However, all of these are summarised on the Parks Victoria Citizen Science page. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to email us at citizenscience@parks.vic.gov.au as well. Any further statements from any of my amazing panelists? No? Brooke, anything from you?
I was just going to say, Karis, if you ever want a job at Parks Victoria, please reach out. You'd be such an asset.
Bring your whole classes. Bring all of the classes as well.
Don't tempt me.
A huge thank you to Jo, Hannah and Karis. We really appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for those people who tuned in to listen. You will find we will keep this recording and we will make it available on our many platforms that we have. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, everyone.
No worries.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everybody.